moving on a little bit. So we haven't done this again, like you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. We
Mhm.
haven't done this segment since our 4 year anniversary podcast when we had Tommy and Matt on. When I had the quick question of would you rather go to the past or future.
Mhm.
That was actually one of the few where we actually had differing. Because
Couldn't even remember
Jeffrey,
what I told you. I think I said pass.
you said past because we all said future because you were
Yeah,
trying to be
that's right.
different. You tried to be different. You
I,
wanted to
I,
be different
I mean,
because
yeah.
just for
Well,
just because of argument's sake, you wanted to be
argument
different.
purposes, yes.
So if you were on last week, I was going to have this question, and it's still relevant because it's a sports question, and because
Ooh.
it's All Star time for the MLB, and
Mhm.
I was thinking, um, do you like fan voting for All Star games?
That's a good question.
Because all the four major sports have all fan
Yep,
vote pretty much for their All Stars, which all that means is if you're a popular player, you're going to be voted
exactly.
in. So, for hockey, Crosby or
Yep.
Ovechkin are always going to be
Mhm.
in. Um, and football, it's always going to be, Patrick Mahomes and, Travis Kelsey and all them. NBA, it's always going to be Steph Curry and LeBron. And then for MLB, it's
Yep.
going to be, even though Trout's hurt, it would have been Trout, but Otani and
Yeah.
Harper and all them, all the big stars, Aaron Judge. It's always going to be them, always
Mhm.
going to be the people who are always going to end up being voted on.
Like the big names, or
Yeah.
just like, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
and it's obviously been that way for years at this point. I don't know when it
Yeah.
started, but it feels like at least 10 plus years since they've added like fan voting kind of thing. But my question to you is, do you like fan voting for All Star game?
Um, that's a good question. Well, so
Like for the
it's kind of
MLB, for
tricky for me.
instance, it was voting for the starters, and then everything
Yeah.
else was kind of decided upon, I guess, writers or whoever kind of decides who the All Stars end up being. Um, so for me, I understand it. I get trying to get fan involvement kind of thing, but I'm not a big fan of it. I don't really care about it. It just more so helps like the bigger kind of fan markets or whatever kind of uh you know going straight through to the voting ballots or whatever all the time. And no matter what, it's always you can only vote a certain amount of times a day, but you can do it multiple times and everything. And it ends up being the rules have changed here and there. Like the NHL recently went to like a few years back went to 3-on-3, so now it's a significantly smaller amount of players, but at least you have one person represented, kind of from each team and everything. Um, but for me, it's never been an interest to me, and I've never been one
Yeah.
to really want to go out and like vote for my all stars or whatever. And
Yeah,
obviously,
and
clearly
that's
could tell
fair.
because a bunch of Philly fans clearly got into this year's, and that's why you have three Philly starters in the All Star game. So
Yeah.
for me, it's just I've never really been
Yeah.
into All Star voting. I think it still could should just be into how well the players are doing or whatever. And I know
Right.
for MLB wise, the All Star game isn't what it used to be because it literally is just an
No,
exhibition game at this
it's
point.
useless
There's
now.
nothing, yeah. So who
There's
really
no
cares? But
incentive if you want to call it that. So, like,
yeah,
to
because
answer
I know
your
a lot
main
of people were
question,
complaining
yeah.
about Skeens being a starter because he, hasn't had that many starts or whatever. But if you really just think
I
of the All
mean,
Star
I'm
game
honestly
as
surprised that honestly some people are complaining that he's been like that he's a star because like he's been a phenom this year. So like
he
I
has, but
personally,
it's the
yeah,
people who
I
say,
get why
yeah,
though, but like it's I think it's one reason because he was last year's number one overall pick and he's dominating. To like it is a cool feature to have like hey like look at a phenom rookie who was drafted number one just last year and he's already dominating in the MLB.
an All
And
Star
so
game is really
I think
just
it's
a
yeah
TV show. So you're going to want to put your posts out there.
exactly like your most
Important.
profitable players
Yeah,
out
and
there
you're
like
gonna want to see
that's
Skeens go
yeah
up against, you know,
Otani or
well,
no
they're
not
gonna be in the
Otani
same
because
team.
he's in the
Uh,
yeah no that's right I forgot about that now.
go up against Aaron Judge and
Yep,
everyone there.
exactly. Yeah, because I can't remember. I can name a whole lot of AL players
Yes,
as much as NL. But no, to
but
answer your
yes,
question, and that's a real good question because So when I was at least younger, because they actually introduced, because I kept thinking, I was like, when did they introduce the fan
I
voting?
think it's when
They
we were kids, like around
Oh,
then.
100%, because I remember going to ball games around the
I think it.
All-Star
I
break,
want to say it was probably.
and
I think it was baseball. Like was one of the first to like
it definitely
introduce
was
that.
because you literally, with your tickets, when you would get there, they would hand out the All-Star ballots. And I
Hmm.
thought that was one of the coolest things. And you would literally punch in your tickets,
Yeah.
or not the tickets, but the All-Star ballot votes, like the actual ballots. And if you want, you could mail them in. I always kept mine because I always thought that was the coolest ones and who I voted for and everything like that. And I doubt I still have them, but just to see like who were like the top players. And so I'm like,
But my thing was when you were doing this, were you doing the
yeah.
best player at the time, or were you just doing your favorite players?
To be fair, there's definitely like some favorite players like Utley. I would
Yeah.
always vote for Utley, but other times I would legitimately vote for some of the best players. So I think like there was like, I would always vote for like Utley, Gerald, Howard. Those three were always my three. I would vote for Philly. Other than that, I would do my best. Like Carlos Beltran, I would vote for. I think I voted for Jeter, David Wright, probably Manny.
Jeffrey, how dare you? How
Hey
dare
man,
you?
hey man, I'm
Your
calling like Steve, just
your
recognizing talent.
Philadelphia, fandom just got
I know.
revoked.
I Sure, we'll go with that. Ruthless today.
Voting for the enemy.
Hey man, there's a better those third baseman would have voted for back then, but you're telling me David Bell was better than David Wright?
Yes.
Your favorite Reds manager.
Hmm.
Oh my god. But no, so I'm it's tough because like I at least
I
especially
under
with
again,
baseball, I'm
I
almost
completely understand
50-50.
why they do it
Yeah.
because
I do
fans
too. I
wise,
get
and
it, but
at the end of the
same
day, I feel like you
time, it
miss out on
kind
so
of
many
does
guys who should
ruin.
be all stars
You
who
do.
don't get it. Like
And so for
Christopher Sanchez
example,
only got in because somebody couldn't. He was a replacement.
yeah. And so literally, for example, Ranger Suarez should have been going, but he's now out, and so I think it's a Braves pitcher is going instead for him.
Yeah, Freed,
So
I think it is.
uh,
I think it's Freed.
yes, that's exactly
So
it
I
is.
don't
Thank you.
know. I don't think
Um,
Wheeler's going to be going either. If he's,
no, I don't.
they haven't
Technically,
announced
I don't.
anything.
I no, they haven't announced anything. I don't know. He's an all star, but I don't know if he's technically going or not
Yeah,
now. Which yeah, but either way, it's like I get the idea, but like just like you mentioned, it doesn't
because I'm
matter
sure
as
there's
it
people
once
who are
did.
complaining about the Phillies having so many all stars into the All Star game, kind of thing. And
I
I
mean,
remember what was it in the NHL? There was some guy who got so many votes, but they didn't
I
want to
know,
put him
and this
in
is
the All Star game. Yeah,
this is why I'm glad you brought this up. Oh, well, so there's two players I have in mind. Zemius Gergensons from, ironically, both Buffalo Sabres players. Gergensons from the Sabres. He was a fan vote in, and he got like so many votes because I think the All Star game was either in Buffalo or just so many Buffalo fans voted for him. And he
yeah,
happened to be an All Star, even though his numbers were shit. And then the one more infamous one you were thinking was John Scott, a
yeah.
literal goon slash enforcer who, to be fair, it was a very screwed up way that the NHL and Bettman did this, where he, because of the fan voting, he was an NHL All Star technically, but then I think he got technically
Sent
sent
down or
down to the
yeah.
minors, and then they weren't going to send him, and that caused a huge,
And then he
you
get like
know,
traded or something like that, and
I
then
forgot how it had happened, but something happened where he got sent down to the minors, but maybe he got traded. I can't remember. But basically, they called him back up, something along the lines of that. But he wasn't going to be an All Star anymore. Fans were so upset that like it basically they forced NHL's hand somehow and made him not only in NHL All Star game, they even made him a captain. He was automatically basically the winner of the whole thing was the All Star
yeah,
MVP, which was kind of dumb, whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's the part of it where I don't like it for fan voting because if you perfect example when the All Star game comes to Philadelphia in 2026, you know how many fans are going to vote even more for Phillies players to be in the All Star game that
They're saying
year?
they're gonna have potentially even more than 8.
Like
You mean
you
they're
could
gonna
have the
they're gonna
entire
fill a whole
roster there.
yeah, they're gonna
That's what I mean.
they're gonna
I'm
fill a
not even kidding.
whole lineup.
I'm not even kidding. Like you can see like a majority of the Phillies on it because
I mean, you probably
it's
could
gonna
have
be in
if
Philadelphia.
JT didn't get hurt and if what is
Yeah.
gonna do well, he probably would have
And
potentially
like to
been.
be fair, like Trey Turner, like, he missed 6 weeks. Okay, that's a huge blow for sure. But like to be fair, he's been playing on an MVP level lately. So like
And he
I
was
think
prior to getting hurt. It's not
and
like
he
he
was.
just
So I think it's legitimate that he's an all-star. Is he, other guys you could have voted around, sure, but like
yeah.
that's
And
kind
really,
of
the
the negative
argument
side as
for
well.
against it is for like the smaller markets who don't have that as great
Yeah.
of fan bases. But
Exactly.
I think the Diamondbacks had a guy who they voted in, who was voted
Yeah.
in. So it's
I
not,
wouldn't be shocked. And I
and
mean, yeah.